It's so great to see you, and I'm so glad that I get the honor of interviewing you today because I love your work, and I think that especially nowadays with your whole concept of compassion and healing and stuff, it's just so relevant to what's going on today, especially with the kind of the additional restrictions and stuff. So maybe you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, and let's go.
So I'm Zoey Zoric. I've been painting for about, oh my gosh, I don't know how many years now, but a few years, 6 years, 5 years, something. Yeah, I focus in on figurative work. I'm really about hands. I love painting hands. They're totally my jam. And I feel like it's one of those things that like we can all relate to. And
Yes.
it's one of those things that like it's like our hands are, you know, they serve the purpose of our priorities and, you know, putting everything into action. And yeah, they symbolize that whole idea of, you know, the action behind, you know, the thoughts and contemplations and hopes and dreams. So yeah.
And I love, I mean, first of all, I think your stuff is pretty interesting and recognizable with you use these really dark darks. Like, so it's almost like things are being backlit or this otherworldly glow that I think that kind of, you see, especially in your oil paintings in real life, which I think is really quite lovely.
It's really difficult to photograph them.
Yes.
But yeah,
Well, like,
no,
it's always better to be seen in person, right?
yes, definitely. But I just love the idea of the drama, you know, these little moments that, you know, may seem inconsequential, but in actuality, they're actually very profound moments. And so I really like the idea of elevating these profound moments.
And I think you recently posted on your Instagram sort of a bit of a quick speed shot of you starting your painting. And that was very, oh, it's behind you. Oh, yeah, that's cool. And so you do those on embroidery hoops? Is that what I heard?
Yeah, yeah. So it was one of those things. I'm not a fan of canvas. I've never liked canvas, and I've never liked the idea of having to frame my work. I always like to start any painting with the finished product in mind. And wood panels, especially right now, like there was a point where, like, you know, sourcing the wood panels were becoming difficult, and then all the prep involved in the wood panels. So the idea of canvas became very alluring. And then using the embroidery hoops. So I love this round format. I'm obsessed with circles. So I love this round format, but I also love the fact that there's like automatic hardware involved. So it's like, it's good to go. It's done.
So you actually put canvas, and instead of putting fabric, you put the canvas in the embroidery hoop. Yeah. Bring that close. Let us see it.
So there we go. It's quite wet.
Yeah, but you can already see the classic Zoey Zoric look. That's really cool.
But I just love the fact that it's like, it's good to go. It's ready to hang. If you wanted a more formal thing, you could even put like a ribbon through here. So yeah.
It's also really interesting too, because it kind of evokes that kind of memory of kind of an older home, or kind of that comfort or the history or where you come from.
Yes. Well, one of my strongest, when I first started painting, one of my first themes was the extinction series of these things that we relied on heavily that are now gone. And so, you know, like, so to me, that sort of echoes, the embroidery hoop echoes that whole idea of like the things that we used to, you know, cherish and revere, and now are like becoming defunct.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always a bit sad. I mean, that's part of, I guess, the price of progress, right? And there's some things you have to leave behind, but some of those things can create this evocative memory of your childhood or your past, or kind of days that were maybe, well, less stressful than today, these days. Anyway.
Yes.
So one of the things I've always been curious about, actually, with your piece is the one that's holding a heart. What's the concept and the sort of the meaning behind that one?
So that was a big one, and there's a lot that goes into that. For me as an artist, it was one of these moments of, let's do the thing that I'm totally afraid of because it's really bold and possibly questionable, and, you know, like, just let's go and do that. So, but it was the whole idea of flirting with heavier, more profound themes, things that were important to me, but just not having the confidence to really address it and really put it out there. And so there was a point
on it a bit.
There was a point where it was just like, let's just make this like, it's an impactful statement, and it's, you know, like me staking my ground, and like, this is me talking about more important, more profound things. And so the whole idea was had started a series of painting scars and being inspired by the Japanese art of repair, of kintsugi. So it's
Oh
this
yeah.
whole idea of like the broken vessel, and it's picked up very carefully and reassembled, and using the gold lacquer to repair it and hold it back together again. And so now the item is more beautiful. It's more valuable. It's more beautiful for
But you can
having.
see the scars.
And so I want us
Mhm.
to do that for our own damage. Like if we can do that for an inanimate object, let's do that for our own damage instead of being self-conscious and like, insecure about our damage. It's part of the trip. It's part of, what makes us us. It's part of our
Mhm.
journey. Let's just all, like embrace it and like face it and realize that it can be a part of something that's going to make us more beautiful. And so as I started going through that and moving through the idea of like actually doing like the physical scars, there was a point where it was like, well, actually, it's usually the invisible scars that are the hardest to reconcile. And so
Right.
so that painting that you're talking about is actually like a large scale painting. It was 4 feet by 3 feet. So it was one of those things where it was just like, okay, well, go big or go home. Let's just all
It's a
in.
statement.
Exactly. Let's really double down on the whole, like, the statement.
Yeah.
So yeah. And it was probably one of my most favorite paintings to be working on. I had worked on it gearing up for the artist project. And there was a point where I was varnishing it. And I think it was like a week before the artist project. And there was a point where I was varnishing it and I'm like, what have I done? And then even at the artist project, being there in my empty booth, and I think I came late and everyone had already cleared up, everyone already set up, and I came and I was setting up in my booth and I'm putting it up, and some janitor, sweeping the floor, he walked by and he stopped and he made all kinds of comments, and I looked at my husband and I'm like, oh dear, and he's like, no, 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 don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. And then in the end it was great, it was really well received. Thank goodness.
Yeah. No, I was surprised if you were going to say it wasn't well received, because everyone that I've seen, because I've been across from you a couple times at the artist project and stuff, and people are always quite entranced by it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So it was one of those pivotal moments for me where it opened up so many doors, and just that idea of really embracing myself and who I am as an artist, and trying to practice what I preach in my artwork, and really live what I'm preaching. And like especially even like now during the pandemic, now it's like I've actually started taking out my pieces so that I can look at it and remind myself more, like I'm actually surrounding myself with my own artwork to be like, be gentle with yourself.
And do you find that practice of surrounding yourself with your work, does it give you the sense of, um, I'm feeling like I need that reminder how far I've come, or are you still feeling as vulnerable as you were feeling when you first originally painted it?
A lot of that's difficult to answer because of the pandemic emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, that's true. That's a really good question. Sorry.
So I feel like there are days where I'm just like, yes, yes, yes. And then I think more than anything, the biggest impact, and this is what influences the answer to your question the most, is right before the global pandemic, I had actually had my first own external out of the house studio. So,
Right.
like going to work to the studio every day and painting every day and like having that focus and that dedication and that carved out time. And then when the pandemic came, okay, well, we had a rent eviction, and, I was staying inside anyways because of the lockdown. And so, moving back into the home to work and then juggling the kids home from school. And so just not having boundaries of like clear paint time. So I haven't been painting that much during the global pandemic, and I'm starting to feel that need and that urge of like, yes, I need to get painting again.
Yeah.
I need to make this happen, and I need to carve this out for myself. So actually even having my artwork around is like, yes, I need to go do that. That's what I need to go do right now.
That's good. Well, and I think too, the other challenge I'm sure is that combined, there's so much new stuff that you have to deal with because of the pandemic, and there isn't also the external deadlines where you don't have a choice. You've got to suck it up and work for the Riverdale Art Walk or whatever show you're working on, right? Because you have to have work in the booth, and it's just so much different now. That whole commitment.
I'm very purpose driven, and so not having the deadlines of the shows is kind of, I mean, it's a little bit of a relief, but at the same time, it's too much of a relief. So now it's
Yeah.
like, what am I painting for? Okay. And so
Yeah.
it was funny,
Heavy duty stress, but just a little bit of stress, kind of just,
a
put
little
you in the
something.
occasionally. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Need that goal, that end goal. Otherwise, you're just kind of staring off into the horizon, like, okay, there's something out there that I need to do sometime soon.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that was one of the reasons. I don't know if you read the full details of the post behind this, but for me, Inktober. So this is all about Inktober, except for I'm not into inks and I don't want to run out and buy a whole bunch of ink stuff. So I'm like, actually, what I just need is a daily practice. So I'm going to do Oiltober.
Oh, that's cool.
So a little paint sketch for every day in the day of October to really get me back into it.
Well, that's quite the commitment. I mean, all that stuff, when you decide to commit to do something once a day, like you were doing, I think your blog post or your, at the beginning of the COVID once a day too. And I remember thinking, wow, I just couldn't do that once a day. That's a lot of emotional commitment and time commitment. And
Well, for me, it was, I only stopped because there was a point where my goal for that was to just, I was going to sit down every day and talk about every single piece that I had in my inventory. And so I got to the end of my inventory and it was just kind of like, well, now what?
we never thought this was going to be a 7-month thing, right?
Exactly. I'm like, you know what? Now is when I need to go back to the studio and make more inventory. So I think there will be a point that like once I start building up a new body of work, but again, because everything is so weird and floaty and I'm not entirely sure. So I mean, like this is even like going back to my roots, so to speak, with the dark and heavy, because there was a point where I started expanding into more pinks and lights. And so now I'm like, okay, let's just get back.
Yeah, or your self-portraits. Not self-portraits, but portraits of people. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, so this was just a, I can bang this out and I can feel really good about it and it can get me back into the groove. Well,
supposed to say.
Well, one of the things that I've been trying to do is to give myself time restrictions because it's like, okay, so I'm going to have an hour and a half to paint today. Let's get something like completed in that hour and a half or 2 hours. I almost always like kind of fudge it and spill over because I'm having such a good time. So for me, one of the things I'm trying to be more cognizant about is, you know, being realistic with my time and just saying, okay, 2 hours, an hour and a half for a painting, 2 hours max. And so let's get that done and go.
There is actually something too to the wonder of that kind of level of discipline where you often end up with a piece that's got such great emotional depth, but is very loosely marked. Like it's loose and it's got a really great style to it. So it's neat. So is this piece going to be on sale at the ArtWalk in the Square store?
Yes. Yes. I need to get myself organized and get that post up. So it'll be up tonight. I'll get that up tonight.
And I'm losing your voice a bit because I'm not sure.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll be getting the photographs together and the info together, and I'll get the post up on the Eventi website tonight.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Yes.
All right, and remind everybody of your Instagram handle so they know where to find you, where to follow you.
Yes, I'm Zoey Zoric. Easy peasy. And there's links in my bio to the ArtWalk in the Square Eventi website.
Excellent.
Until August 9th?
Yep.
Deadline.
And then, it might still be online or, I'm sure they can still find the pieces at your website or online or your Instagram. But that was wonderful. Thank you so much for that really candid and fun interview.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you so much for doing these interviews. I think it's such a great idea. It's so nice. It's a nice, in lieu of being in the booths. And actually, I feel like I'm like getting more, no, not more, but, getting more acquainted with the artist's artwork as opposed to being stuck in my booth going like, oh, I think I can, maybe on the way to the bathroom, I can run over to that person's booth and check out their work because I really want to see it. So,
yeah, you get a little bit of that.
Yes. So yeah, so it's a nice treat.
Okay,
so
well, we're going to post
so
this.
Awesome.
And thank you so much and enjoy your weekend. And I look forward to seeing what you're going to paint tomorrow.
Yay.
Okay,
Thank you. Bye.